Cape Ann Report, and I'm your host, Maureen Aylward. Our topic is Age and Dementia-Friendly Cape Ann, an initiative spearheaded by SeniorCare. And with me around the table are Scott Trenti, CEO of SeniorCare, Bob Gillis, Age and Dementia-Friendly Cape Ann Steering Committee member, and Susan Doughty, a caregiver support specialist at SeniorCare. Welcome to Cape Ann Report.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
This is a very important issue. It's so important to understand why we need age and dementia-friendly services on Cape Ann. And Scott, I guess I'll turn to you first. Could you give us an overview of the interaction between SeniorCare and this new program that's happening on Cape Ann?
Sure. So one of the initiatives that's happening over the country is two movements. One is called Age-Friendly Communities, and the other is called Dementia-Friendly Communities. The World Health Organization and AARP in the United States endorses age-friendly, and there's also another model, Dementia-Friendly America, and there's Dementia-Friendly Massachusetts. Last year, Governor Baker declared Massachusetts an age-friendly state. We were the second in the nation for that declaration. New York beat us to it, and also Colorado has recently done that. So the age-friendly movement of AARP provides kind of a toolkit for how to make your community more age-friendly. So when we talk about age-friendly or dementia-friendly communities, you know, we're not saying that we're not age-friendly or we're not, but it's more of an organized, structured kind of way to approach different changes that can be made in the community. The dementia-friendly also has a toolkit, and there are various commonalities between the two models. So you have sort of sectors of the community, like housing, transportation, social inclusion. What do you do with outdoor spaces in buildings? So at SeniorCare, we decided to build a hybrid model, which incorporated both age-friendly communities and dementia-friendly communities. So we created this model, and without going into too much detail, we have 10 areas of focus. And what we did to get this going was through some generous grant funding, we hired University of Massachusetts Gerontology Institute, and they conducted a community needs assessment. So they did community meetings in the 4 communities of Cape Ann. They did focus groups. They did individual stakeholder interviews, a demographic study, et cetera, and then they produced a final report. We also did our own survey, and certain things bubbled to the top for Cape Ann. Such as the need for education, and so that people really know what's out there. You know, as far as health-related and well-being related services, there's so much out there, and it can be very confusing for people. We also identified intergenerational connectedness and services. So we do, on our steering committee, have a representative from the Gloucester school system. We also identified caregiving as well as a big need, and veteran services, and kind of a regional approach to the extent possible, because every community, the 4 communities, have their own uniqueness. But how can we kind of address these areas in a comprehensive way, in a systematic way? I mentioned the 10 areas of focus, and I sometimes call it the wheel, which you'll be showing. And you can't really go at all of them all at once. So this is kind of, I always say it's a beginning that never ends. So long after, this is something that we want to see cultivate and grow over the years.
And add to our culture here.
And, yes.
Yeah, not that it isn't already here, because you know, people are getting older. Lots of folks are taking care of aging parents, and even caring for parents or elders with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And when you start to get into that phase of your life, it's confusing. And so you don't really know what to do. And so this program seems to be not only building awareness from a grassroots standpoint, but also the education of people and just bringing up why it's important.
Right.
Susan, why is this needed here? You worked with a lot of caregivers and.
So the education piece is huge because a lot of people wouldn't be likely to ask for help, or they'd feel overwhelmed with the information, or they didn't have trust about letting someone into their home. So kind of like simplifying all the resources and custom tailoring something. Mine is a smaller role, focusing on custom tailoring the needs of a particular caregiver, because there'll be like all kinds of information from hospitals and the Visiting Nurse Association, and if hospice is involved, all kinds of different agencies, and they're not sure where to turn. They're overwhelmed with paperwork, so you try to simplify it for them, and then they're more likely to, like, it's great to have the committees, but a lot of caregivers are embarrassed or intimidated because they're afraid if they admit that they have some dependency that someone's going to interfere with having them at home or that sort of thing, rather than supporting them. So,
Right. And so this program, especially with so many different areas that you'll eventually take up, right? So these 10 areas, you'll be able to, again, on that ongoing flow of dealing with transportation issues and social inclusion and respect, and that must be all built into the program.
Yes,
right?
and actually we're having a summit on Tuesday, May 1st at the Gloucester Elks from 10 to 2 p.m. And we will be unveiling, for lack of a better word, our initial action plan, so that it's open to the public. It's a free event. We'll have a couple of speakers there, and we'll actually show people what our steering committee has come up with for both short and long-term goals. And you mentioned a really important word, grassroots. So while this may be spearheaded by SeniorCare, it's really a community-wide effort, with representatives from various sectors of the community that are participating and working together to pull this off.
And so, Bob, you're a member of the steering committee. You're also the president of Cape Ann Savings Bank, and a business that's involved with this initiative. So what makes Cape Ann Savings Bank get involved with a program like this?
Well, Scott called me several months ago before the program started and asked me if I'd be interested, and I certainly was on a number of levels. I've got people in my family who've suffered from dementia, and also my job at the bank. We're dealing with elderly people all the time, and elderly financial abuse is a serious problem that we try to keep front and center with all of our employees, particularly tellers and customer service, who are dealing with the cash on a regular basis. So it's an ongoing problem, and I really enjoy being part of this, the Aging Dementia-Friendly Cape Ann. It's a great learning experience for me, and I'm hoping to apply some of what we learn to our job at the bank. And
What do tellers see on a regular basis? Can you describe what it's like to have someone come in and, maybe someone who hasn't been diagnosed yet, or someone who's a regular at the bank, and how do they present? How do you know that there might be an issue?
Sure. Well, first of all, we're a local bank. We're a local community bank, and we know our customers for the most part. So most people who are coming in, we know them on some level. And so over time, we also get to learn their habits. And so our people are trained to really focus on something that's out of the ordinary. And it's a delicate situation, because oftentimes people with early stages of dementia, they're in denial, whatever the case may be, and our people have to be very careful, which is why I'm looking forward to we're scheduling a training with Scott and SeniorCare soon to help our employees even more to learn about the issues surrounding this, because it's critically important. You hear about elderly people getting scammed all the time, and it's something that we really want to avoid, and we want to protect our customers.
And there's also that issue of financial exploitation. So there could be an outside caregiver who's involved with caring, or there are children who don't live in the area, but they hire someone, for instance. I mean, there's family members could be exploiting an elder. And so you see that also at the bank? I mean, you're able to identify that? And
We do, and also it's tied in with a lot of things, as Scott mentioned, but the other thing is the opioid problem and the addiction problem that we have. As a result of that, you're seeing more financial abuse of seniors, not just seniors, but in particular, they're the more vulnerable population. So you're seeing more of that, and it's just another thing that people have to really pay attention to and keep an eye out for.
And caregivers are also overwhelmed with taking on, a loved one's bills, and so I would imagine that that's one of those things that the bank would also serve in a sense of making it a friendly place to come in and to interact and to say, I don't know what to do. I don't know. How do I make this so it's not looks like I'm exploiting my loved one or my family member.
Right, and the key there again really is determining what your customer does on a regular basis, and if it's something out of the ordinary, it really should be a red flag for our people. If it's a teller, talk to your supervisor about the situation. What can we do to help this senior? And sometimes there's no problem at all. But we always tell our customers, we're going to do everything that we can to protect you, and if we're overstepping our bounds, we're sorry. But we're trying our best to protect you.
So Bob, as a member of the steering committee, what are you seeing in terms of other members and how they're coming together? Just your experience with the group so far?
What I think is great about it is, as Scott pointed out earlier, it ties in a lot of different disciplines. It's the housing, it's transportation, it's medical care, it's all of these different things that all play a part in it. And I think that's a great holistic view of the issue, and that's how it's best dealt with.
A couple of the services that we work with the banks on. So we have a protective services department at SeniorCare, and so we investigate reports of elder abuse of various types, but including financial exploitation. So we do in fact receive reports from banks, and we investigate the allegations and try to reduce the risk. Sometimes it's a matter of, if the exploitation has already occurred, of stopping the bleeding. And typically we report those cases if we substantiate to the DA's office. But another service that we have, and we just started a private pay service along these lines, is a money management program. So the state provides the Massachusetts Money Management Program, whereby a volunteer is paired with an elder, and they'll go to the home a couple times a month and help them to pay their bills, reconcile their checkbook, etc. The elder is, of course, in charge of their money. Suggestions might be made, or if they're having credit problems, we might try to help with that. But there's a cap on income cap to be able to participate in that program. So we recognize there's a need above and beyond, people that make X amount of dollars. Other people need help too. They may be make more money or have more income, but still have that exact same need. So those are a couple of the remedies to what you may see in a bank if there's a suspected exploitation. The nice thing about having a money manager in is you've got eyes and ears in there.
They might have the need, but they also have the vulnerability.
Correct.
Right.
In that situation.
And another thing in the community, there are a lot of great restaurants in Cape Ann, and a caregiver recently shared that she wasn't able to take her husband with dementia, to a restaurant because he'd be loud, or he'd order his meal, and then while they were preparing it, he'd say, "When are they going to take my order?" Because short-term memory wasn't helpful at that time. So she would, there are cards we got from the Alzheimer's Association. You can just write a note to the server, "Please be patient, my companion has a memory deficit." And she did that in the restaurant, and it went well. And that speaks to even just a 10-minute education of in the restaurants, because typically they'll come up and they'll talk quickly, which can agitate someone with dementia. You know,
That's a great
and
point.
it'll make the difference between an enjoyable evening out and, you know, agitation. So typically someone, oh, we got tonight's specials and tonight's specials, blah, 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 blah. And by the time they get half a minute into it, you know, the person, you know, your care recipient is all overwhelmed and you're leaving the restaurant. So she used one of these cards. You can even write, please be patient. And, you know, my companion has a, you know, memory deficit.
I always wonder how those waitresses can remember all those things.
Yeah, me too.
I know, it's amazing. I can't remember it, but I mean, when they're saying it fast, imagine what a person that's overwhelmed with too much distraction. So she did that, and she said, we had a lovely dinner. And the waitress was wonderful, and when my husband turned to her and said, when are you going to take my order? And so she just took the order again. And
That's
then,
so nice.
and didn't come back again until she had the food, and it went well. And that's just education. That's a 10-minute presentation at a
There's a
restaurant.
nationwide program called Purple Table. I don't know
Yes.
if that's run by
Yes.
the Alzheimer's Association.
It's wonderful.
'Cause that's
Yeah.
the color of Alzheimer's disease, and that works really well. So a
Yes.
caregiver can look online and look up Purple Table and find out in the area where the restaurants are that have been trained or that have
That
Purple
particular
tables.
table, yeah.
And so that's similar to what this initiative would do,
Yes.
is the training to go into different businesses like restaurants, to provide that kind of training, to provide that education and awareness, so people can walk into a restaurant and sit down and make that ask and give someone a card and say, please be patient. And like, we've had that training, we know exactly what to do. People are welcome here. Is there a program to
a
do
great program.
stickers or, you know, for businesses? And
We've thought of that. You just beat us to the punch.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
No, that's great. At some point, and that's a great example
Yeah.
that Susan provided. You know, another thing is I mentioned one of the other areas of focus is the open spaces and buildings, and I think of the boulevard, right? So you've got, they redid the boulevard, made it wider, nice smooth surface. The benches are spaced such that if you do have someone with mobility issues, you know, be it in a walker or using a cane or a younger adult with disabilities, there's space such that you can rest, right? That's great. And, you know, another thing on the boulevard is you'll see at various points there's a metal plate, and it has kind of raised circles on it, right? And they're located at crosswalks. That's for visually impaired or blind people, okay? So that's another example. And, you know, you think about like sidewalks, right? This age-friendly community stuff, it's not just seniors. It's also younger folks. It's younger people. It's people with
Disabled.
disabilities. It's folks with autism, developmental disabilities, et cetera. And if you have a sidewalk that is done properly, not only are you going to be helping folks with mobility issues, but you're also going to be helping moms or dads pushing the stroller. You know, so we try to think like that. You know, what makes sense for the continuum of age. You know, yeah, we focus mostly on older adults, but
That's a good point from the standpoint of that you take the senior adult unit at Addison Gilbert
Gilbert, yeah.
Hospital. We just made a large contribution by our standards to AGH for the senior adult unit to expand their beds from 12 to 20. But to Scott's point,
Great.
It's interesting because it's not just increasing the number of beds, but it's also setting the tiles in a certain way so that when seniors put their feet on the floor, they're not intimidated by it. It's the wallpaper, it's the windows,
exactly.
it's all of these things that we got an education from Cindy Donaldson and her staff, and it was really enlightening what's involved with that.
yeah, there's so much happening at that time of your life if you do get a diagnosis, and it's confusing, and also with caregivers just readjusting to this new personality that
Which is
there.
Changing, which is, you know,
Right,
always
it's
in
constantly
motion.
changing, right.
So they can adjust to one type of behavior and a change in the lifestyle, but then it changes. And there are also what it's important to realize for family, friends, the community, caregivers of someone with dementia are in a grief process already. They're grieving a lifestyle, they're grieving losing a partner, a parent, whatever. So they're in a grief process. And lots of times relatives and friends will understand when someone passes away. Everyone understands the grief process and they're bringing food, but a lot of people aren't there because they don't understand they're in a grief process in this journey. And one thing that I repeatedly hear from caregivers is even when they do come across really good resources, they're already so overwhelmed. They're so overwhelmed with information overload. So one of the things in my role as a caregiver support specialist is to simplify the information, custom tailor a plan for what they're going through at their time, which will change. This will work and then it'll change. So we take all these resources as options counselors and what have you, and just pare it down. This is what affects where you are and what you're comfortable doing. Make an action plan for them.
Right. Let's talk about this part of your wheel is intergenerational connectedness and the importance of bringing young people into that awareness space of what it's like to either live with someone with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. There might be a grandparent moving in, or they might see a change. Young toddlers can see it, teenagers, middle schoolers can see it. And I understand that there's a representative, as you mentioned, from the Rockport school system. The Gloucester school system, sorry. And hopefully the other communities as well will get involved. But what can you speak to that piece? Because that's wonderful. Are you going into schools? Are you, passing out information? Or what does that look like?
So, the first 2 years here, this past year has just been sort of planning, getting the results of the surveys, et cetera, and intergenerational programming and connectedness really bubble to the top. I think it's critical. It's one of the most critical areas in order to sustain this over time. Long after the four of us are no longer sitting in these seats, and a new generation of younger adults, carry the torch. So, I've talked to Dr. Safier and I've talked to Rob from the Rockport school system, and they're very much on board, with how can we utilize how can we have maybe a couple classes in the health teacher could do, relative to, what is dementia, or what is memory loss, what is aging, what is normal aging. Also, how can we come up with different events or situations where younger people can be in the presence of older adults? How can we make that happen? And it does happen, actually, in many instances. Yet most schools have volunteer program or mandatory
Community service.
Community service. So how can we sort of make sure that a part of that, or one of the options for kids, is to somehow be with older adults, or things of that nature. But
maybe go into the daycare, the adult daycare center, or going to the nursing homes. I mean, those are
exactly.
More of that, more of them.
But so many caregivers are saying to me, this is great, I can take a breath, I can feel like I have a little control over something that felt out of control. And when I asked them if there's anything we can do to improve, and they said, I just want to know how I could have learned about this sooner. And the answer to that is what you're talking about. We need to go in the schools. It needs to be simple because the schools are overloaded with programs, and cut it down. Do something in 15 minutes or something, and give it to the middle school, high school, pilot it at that age, because when they come across something, a lot of people I don't know what to do. I think my neighbor's aunt had that. I don't know if I want to talk to them. I'm embarrassed. But if the kids have some background, when the grandparent or the parent or whoever, comes across some of these aging issues, especially dementia, it's growing, then they'll say, oh yeah, that's right. They won't be going blindly and just kind of floundering and let's all take turns trying to figure this out, they'll say, oh wait, I know what to do.
Or they won't be saying to grandmother, you just asked me that question
Exactly.
a minute ago, and why are
And
you
that-
asking me again? And there's so much of that confusion.
And how to speak dementia, basically. There are ways
Right.
to speak to people that doesn't evoke, the agitation. And it's
Yeah.
counterintuitive. If you say, oh, I forget your name, it's a courtesy to say, oh, it's Susan. When you say that to someone with dementia, they will say, oh, you make me feel stupid or dumb or whatever. I mean, that's their response. You need to learn the language, so to speak. Don't disagree, don't argue, don't keep reminding them.
Yes, don't keep reminding them.
Yeah.
There's that level of patience. This is a kindness initiative.
Yes.
It really is
Absolutely.
kindness, and that and compassion, and moving towards understanding for this. Sometimes it doesn't happen in your family, and when it does, it's some people are involved in the care of the elder with dementia or Alzheimer's, and there are other parts of our family who don't ever take care of a parent, or they might live far away. They might just not want to deal with it. So this is just such a kind thing to do, it seems to me, to have the community come together, involve the schools and businesses, and make it possible for caregivers to get outside or go to a restaurant or to be accepted.
Right.
Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. Susan makes really good points. I mean, she runs a support group here in Gloucester, and folks are welcome to attend that. Is it weekly or?
It's once a month.
Once a month.
But there are 3 different groups we do, one in Beverly, that's not Cape Ann.
That's okay.
We do the one in Gloucester, we do Beverly, and we do Wenham as well. But it's just the greatest feeling to see a caregiver go, oh, I'm normal, because they have such guilt about feeling angry, irritated, resentful. Those are normal grief feelings. And when they realize they're in a grief process and they hear another caregiver say, oh, you feel resentful too? I feel like a terrible person. So that's perfectly normal feelings for something like that. So
Great.
it's helpful.
Well, this is a wonderful initiative, the Age and Dementia Friendly Cape Ann program, spearheaded by SeniorCare, but also involving so many people in the 4 communities. It's wonderful to see this happen. And you have your summit on May 1st. I
We
wish you
do.
luck on that, and
Thank
I
you.
hope that people can go. Thank you for being on Cape Ann and talking about this very important issue.
Thank you for having us.
Sure,
Thank
sure.
you.
I'd like to have you back. This is a perennial issue that we always have to come back to. I think it's really important. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Until the next time on Cape Ann, take care.